Hello, hi, it's me, Julian Greystoke, here once again in my darkened library. I have a ring light, but there's only so much it can do. A little while ago, actually probably a long while ago, one of my viewers asked if I would talk a little bit about character arcs. They were struggling with creating character arcs. They were like, I'm okay at creating the characters themselves, but I really have trouble with arcs. And they wanted me to talk about it. Now, before we get into this, I do want to make it clear that I am not the god of writing. Like I always say, the stuff I'm going to talk about is not even necessarily stuff that I have mastered, because many of us writers know what we should do, but implementing it on the page is a whole other story, because I'm going to tell you a secret. Writing is hard. So even as I talk about this, there may be things that people who have read my books are going to look at and be like, Julian, you don't do that very well. But just because I haven't mastered it doesn't mean I don't understand how it works. So we're going to talk a little bit about character arcs. And I do also encourage you to not only watch this video, but go check out what other people are saying as well, because different things are going to work for different people. Writing is not rules, it's really just guidelines. Play the Pirates of the Caribbean clip.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
So one pitfall that I can see people running into when trying to figure out character arcs is holding them separate from the story itself. We might tend to think of the story needs to do this and the character needs to do this, and the two things don't really mesh. So definitely what you want to be looking out for as you're creating a character's arc is to make sure that it flows with the story. It is interwoven with the story and not a separate thing. So especially if you're a plotter, as you're planning out the story, make it serve the character's arc. I would definitely, because I'm a character writer, make the story serve the character, not the character serve the story, but people who are less character writers might tell you the exact opposite, so it's going to come down a little bit to what you want to do, but the most important thing is to make sure those two things intermesh. And I suppose you're kind of wondering, like, what even is a character arc? At its most basic level, a character starts out one way and ends up another way at the end of the story. That's the most basic level, but it can take a lot of forms and it doesn't even need to be huge. This is Julian from the future. I kind of forgot to mention that also character arcs don't always need to be emotional, they can also be physical, and often you see it where somebody's got to train to win the big fight. But a lot of times the emotional arc does go along with the physical arc. In adult media, you don't often see a physical arc just by itself. There's usually some kind of, however small, emotional arc that goes along with it. So they do tie together, but I prefer an emotional arc with possibly a little side of physical arc. Some people prefer more physical arc, less emotional arc, just depends. Most commonly you see big character arcs in YA because the young characters are coming to adulthood, and that's probably one of the easiest arcs to accomplish is coming of age. The coming of age arc, we've seen it a million times. Character starts out in a more innocent or childish place, and by the end they are leading an army, and they have put away childish things and their mentor is probably dead. You can look at so many examples from movies to books if you want examples of a coming of age arc. But other arcs can be more difficult, and a lot of times you don't see them as much in adult stories. In a lot of adult stories you encounter what is called a flat arc, but let's talk about the types of arc. First of all, we have the change arc, and definitely the coming of age arc falls under the change arc umbrella. You've got a character who is unfulfilled or has some deep flaws or notions that are incorrect. Something is missing from their life. Their wants and needs are not in balance. Then there's the flat arc that I mentioned, which I find much more common in adult stories. A flat arc is just what it sounds like. The character is pretty much whole and complete in who they're going to be at the beginning of the story, and they don't change significantly by the end of the story. And a lot of people might tell you that that is the worst kind, you should avoid that, you should always have a character grow and change. But honestly, if it's not working for the story, not everybody needs to have a big growth arc. My cat literally just stepped on my tablet just enough to get rid of all my windows. So that's great. In fact, you will find a lot of flat arcs from my main characters in many of my stories. Sometimes I do like them to grow and change, especially in my young adult, but a lot of times my characters are pretty certain who they are at the beginning of the story, and while they work to get what they want, they don't need to change in huge fundamental ways. Something that I have noticed that I often do is have a main character with a flat arc and a close side character who does need to have a change arc. That's just something that I like to do. I'm not saying it's best or even great. I'm saying that it's something that I do and also a possibility for you. It's not only the main character who might need to grow and change and have an arc. For some reason, I personally find it most interesting for me to explore a character's growth through the lens of another character. I don't know why, it's just something I like. And finally, there is the negative arc, where the character basically does the change arc thing, but, goes evil.
Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Vader.
Thank you.
You don't see this one super often, but it is in like villain origin stories and such, where the character starts out in a good place and through the arc ends up in a not as good place. One key element to a character arc is dealing with your character's wants and needs. Usually when I'm writing a story, I don't sit down and think, what are my character's wants and needs? But it's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. The thing your character needs can also be a deep personal truth. It doesn't always have to be external, like he needs to defeat the bad guy to get what he wants. It can also be like Harry wants to win a Quidditch match, but to do so, he needs to learn how to let the other players take their moment in the spotlight sometimes. Or let's use the example of Thor in the first Thor movie. He wants to be the Prince of Asgard, but he needs to learn some friggin' humility, okay?
You are a vain, greedy, cruel boy! And you are an old man and a fool!
And if we look at Loki, he is in a constant state of denying what he needs. Loki, at least in the movies, is generally wants his own ends. He's always got some kind of scheme. He's generally looking for power and control, but he needs to learn how to, not be an ass. And he seldom actually gives that a try. It's usually being manipulative, and as a result, he doesn't really grow. He generally fights against what he needs to learn because he just wants things to be plopped in his lap, essentially. Which can be something you can definitely work with a character. Characters are most interesting when they're fighting what they need. And of course, your character arcs can also tie into the overall themes of your story. Like I said at the beginning, we definitely want to make sure that our arcs are woven in and integral to the story. And if you're a character-driven author, sometimes I feel like that can come a little bit more naturally, but not always. So basically our takeaways from this pretty simple little sort of baby's first character arc kind of video that I'm doing here are: make sure that your character arc ties into your story and themes. Flat character arcs are okay. You're allowed to have other characters besides the main character have an arc. In fact, I encourage it. And finally, wants and needs play a huge role in character arcs. Even though I am a pantser, if there's going to be an arc, especially with the main character, I do tend to know what that's going to be beforehand. So I will know where the character is and where they need to be, and I will often have several key points that are going to be like learning points throughout the story in my head already. I hope this was helpful. Feel like maybe it was a little bit random, but hey, I hope that you got something out of it today. Like I said, I'm not the god of writing, so always go and look and see what other people are saying as well. But if anything resonated with you, cool. I hope you didn't mind my cats meowing in the background. It's getting to be dinner time, but I want to finish filming before they have to have their dinner, so that's why they're mad at me. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you'll check out other things here on this channel. There's a lot of AuthorTube content here, so go check some of it out. Some of my other advice might work for you. Who knows? Kinshi was here to personally shout at me about the lack of dinner. Kinshu says that you should also feel free to check out my Patreon, where all of the donations go towards helping me publish my own books. All of the links to my social media are down in the doobly-doo, just below Kinshu, and she and I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is we happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Got this! Here's the guy there just in the nick of time! What just?
Big damn heroes, sir.
Ain't we just?
Our big damn heroes for this month are Merween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Persephone, Light Julie, Anna, Belle, Anne Sophie, Callison, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, and Lennox. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies, this is me.